Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about the engine of life itself. It's a process that's happening all around us, every single second, but, it took scientists centuries to figure it out. We are talking about the amazing chemical reaction of photosynthesis. So let's just start with a really simple question. Have you ever looked at a massive tree, maybe 100 feet tall, weighing tons, and then looked at a tiny seed you could hold in your hand and wondered, where does all that stuff come from? I mean, where does all that mass actually get built from? The soil? You'd think so, but not really. The real answer is so much more incredible. That tree is built almost literally out of thin air. The growth of that tree, and pretty much all life on this planet, is powered by photosynthesis. And the story of how we figured that out, well, it's this fantastic scientific detective story. Okay, first up, let's dive into that mystery. Our story starts back in the 18th century. Scientists at the time were trying to solve this really fundamental puzzle. They knew that air was essential for fire and for life, but they also knew that both fire and breathing could somehow damage the air. They just had no idea how. So meet our first detective, a guy named Joseph Priestley. In the 1770s, he starts doing these brilliant, simple experiments. He starts by just lighting a candle and putting a sealed glass jar over it. And yeah, just as you'd expect, the flame goes out pretty quickly. So he figured the burning candle must have somehow injured the air. But then he tried something new. He did the same thing, but this time he put a little mint plant inside the jar with the candle. And what happened? The candle stayed lit for much longer. The plant was, somehow, doing something to the air, something the candle needed. He confirmed this with his most famous experiment. He put a mouse in the bell jar, and sadly, it couldn't survive for long. But when he put a mint plant in there with the mouse, the little guy stayed alive and well. It was so clear. The plant was fixing the damaged air. This led Priestley to his incredible hypothesis. Plants restore the air. They put back whatever it is that breathing animals and burning candles take out. This was a huge first clue, but a really crucial piece of the puzzle was still missing. See, Priestley's experiments were a massive step forward, but they didn't always work. Other scientists would try to repeat them and get totally different results, which just made everything more confusing. And that's where our next detective, Jan Ingenhouse, enters the story. He suspected there was a missing variable, light. And he proved it brilliantly. First, he showed that the plant could only restore the air when it was in the sunlight. If you did the same experiment in the dark, nothing. Then, using an aquatic plant, he saw something amazing. In bright light, tiny bubbles started forming all around the green leaves. He actually collected those bubbles and identified them as a newly discovered gas, oxygen, the very gas that would go on to shape our entire planet's atmosphere. Now for Section 2, Nature's Essential Recipe. So, we've got two key ingredients now, sunlight and that bad air that plants take in. In the 19th century, scientists really started to nail down the rest of nature's essential recipe. So as you can see, right after Ingenhouse figured out the role of light, the next big questions were, what exactly is the plant making with all this? And what is that bad air? So let's tackle that first part, thanks to a man named Julius von Sachs. So Sachs is the one who proved that plants are producing glucose, a type of sugar, as their food. He showed that this glucose gets made in the green parts of the plant, what we now call chloroplasts, and it's often stored as starch. Okay, so plants use light to make sugar. But what are they making it from? The last ingredient to be confirmed was that damaged air that Priestley first noticed. By the late 1800s, scientists were pretty sure it was carbon dioxide. But, how do you prove definitively that a plant absolutely needs it to survive? Well, the proof came from this really elegant experiment called Moll's half-leaf test. You take a leaf, still on the plant, and you seal just one half of it inside a bottle that has a chemical that sucks up all the carbon dioxide. The other half is just out in the open air. You leave the whole thing in the sun for a while, and then you test the entire leaf for starch. The result? The half that was out in the air turns blue-black, meaning it's full of starch. The half that was starved of CO2? Nothing. Proof positive. Okay, on to Section 3, the water-splitting twist. So the recipe seems complete, right? Plants use sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide to make sugar and oxygen. But this led to a question that stumped scientists for decades. And the answer, well, it turned everything completely on its head. I mean, think about it. The ingredients are carbon dioxide, that's CO2, and water, H2O. And the main thing they spit out is oxygen, O2. For decades, it just seemed obvious. The plant must be taking the CO2, breaking off the carbon to make sugar, and then just releasing the two leftover oxygen atoms. It makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah, well, they were all completely wrong. The real turning point, the big twist in our story, came from a very, very unexpected place.
This revolutionary idea came from a microbiologist named Cornelius van Niel. And he wasn't studying big oak trees or mint plants. No, he was studying bacteria. Specifically, bacteria that did a whole different kind of photosynthesis. The absolute key was in comparing two different processes. Van Niel saw that green plants take in hydrogen oxide, that's just water, H2O, and they release oxygen, O2. But his sulfur bacteria, they took in hydrogen sulfide, H2S, and what did they release? Not oxygen, but pure sulfur, S. Do you see the pattern? In both cases, the organism splits the hydrogen compound and releases the other element as waste. And this led Van Niel to his incredible inference. Photosynthesis isn't about splitting CO2. It's a reaction where light energy is used to split a hydrogen donor. For plants, that donor is water. So the oxygen that plants breathe out doesn't come from carbon dioxide at all. It comes from splitting water molecules, a total game changer. This wild idea was finally proven for sure in 1941. Scientists used a heavy version of oxygen, an isotope called O18, to tag the water molecules they gave to a plant. Then they just watched to see where that heavy oxygen would show up. And there it was, plain as day, in the oxygen gas the plant released. The case was finally closed. And that brings us to our final section, the formula for life. So after more than 150 years of brilliant experiments, wrong turns, and revolutionary insights, the complete picture finally came into focus. And so here it is, the complete recipe that took centuries to put together. It starts with Priestley's bad air, 6 molecules of carbon dioxide. It adds 12 molecules of water. Then, powered by sunlight, the plant does its magic. It splits the water, grabs the hydrogen, and uses it with the carbon to build 1 molecule of glucose, the sugar that fuels all of us. And what's left over? The very thing Priestley's mouse needed to breathe, 6 molecules of pure oxygen. So, from a simple candle in a jar all the way to tracing radioactive atoms, we managed to unravel one of nature's deepest secrets. It's a process that has powered our entire planet for billions of years by turning sunlight into life. Which just leaves us with one last thought. As we look for new ways to power our own future, what can we still learn from nature's perfect little solar engine?